There is a level of discipline that makes people uneasy in your presence. And today you're going to see exactly how that level is reached. Have you ever noticed that person who doesn't fall off, who rises at the same hour every day, follows the same sequence, and never disappears? While everyone else quits by week 3, they continue. While everyone else explains, they execute. And do you know what people say about them? That something about them feels wrong. There is an old system, developed in Japanese Zen monasteries, that produces this exact kind of disturbing consistency. It's called Gyoji, the practice that sustains itself. And once you grasp how it functions, breaking commitments stops being an option. But there is a price. This method is not designed for everyone. It demands the removal of a version of you that you didn't realize was in control. Before I break it down, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and comment with the habit you want to lock into your life. That signal matters, and it tells me you're not here to be entertained, but to change. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The story you're about to hear centers on a software consultant named Ethan. He was intelligent, professionally successful, and outwardly disciplined, yet one flaw kept repeating. He could not maintain a habit longer than 2 weeks. The gym lasted a month or 2, then disappeared. Meditation survived a few sessions before collapsing. Reading followed the same script: a book purchased, a few pages read, then silence inside a drawer. The sequence never changed. Monday arrived with certainty and ambition. By Wednesday, negotiation began. Friday ended in collapse. Sunday was reserved for promises about a better next week. Ethan tested every solution available: tracking applications, reward systems, accountability partners. None of it held, because the battle wasn't against motivation or discipline. He was resisting something he couldn't see: the underlying structure governing his behavior. Everything shifted the day he learned why Zen monks can practice daily for centuries without interruption. And no, it has nothing to do with willpower. It goes far deeper than that, and it's far more unsettling. Chapter 2. The Secret of the Monks. Inside Zen monasteries exists a rule that appears simple but rewires everything. Gyoji. Translated directly, it means practice that continues without interruption. Without interruption. Pause on that for a moment. It means that since the year 1200, every single morning at 3:30 a.m., a bell sounds at Eihei Temple. And since that same year, every single morning, the monks rise, not at 3:25, not at 3:35, precisely at 3:30. Do you know what never occurs inside those walls? No monk remains in bed wondering, "Should I skip today?" That question doesn't form. It doesn't exist. Why? Because they understand something most people never learn. Your mind sorts commitments into only 2 categories: reversible and irreversible. Reversible commitments invite debate. Irreversible commitments execute themselves. When a monk takes vows before the entire community, he is not making an attempt. He is rewriting who he is. He is not agreeing to meditate. He is declaring himself a practitioner. The declaration is witnessed. Identity shifts. Negotiation ends. A Harvard neuroscientist who has spent 15 years studying habit formation uncovered a critical insight. When behavior becomes public, the primitive brain processes failure as a threat to survival. In ancestral environments, loss of status meant death. Your nervous system still operates under that rule. Ethan applied this principle immediately. He abandoned private intentions and replaced them with public commitments. He wrote the declaration by hand. I am someone who meditates for 20 minutes every day at 5 a.m. for 90 consecutive days. He signed it. He posted it publicly. He told everyone around him. His girlfriend dismissed it as dramatic. His colleagues mocked the effort. Good. Every reaction became pressure. Every morning he considered quitting. He pictured explaining his failure to every person who had witnessed the declaration. Day 3 delivered the first real confrontation. The alarm sounded at 5 a.m. His mind reacted instantly. You're exhausted. This isn't healthy. Skipping once won't matter. But the system had already changed. The thought of publicly admitting defeat after 3 days was intolerable. Looking his girlfriend in the eye and repeating the same failure again was worse. The declaration inverted the equation. Quitting now hurt more than continuing. And that's where the real conflict began. Chapter 3: The Internal War. Even with the weight of public pressure, Ethan was still fighting a daily battle. His body was indifferent to reputation or declarations. When it was tired, it wanted sleep. The public commitment had ended the internal debate, but biology still resisted every morning. That's when he encountered the monk's second rule: non-negotiable hours. Every day, most people burn mental energy on the same useless question. When will I do this? Before breakfast or after? Morning or night? That single decision consumes glucose meant for execution. You're draining fuel, deciding when to move instead of moving. Ethan selected 5 a.m., not because he enjoyed early mornings or admired the sunrise. He chose it because the world was inactive. No messages, no emails, no interruptions, no excuses available. The choice had nothing to do with optimization. It was about removal, removing every justification for delay. The first week was brutal. His body resisted every morning. That resistance was expected. The body operates on established patterns, and he was forcing a new one into place. It pushed back. During the second week, a shift occurred. He began waking 2 minutes before the alarm. His nervous system was preparing in advance. On the 14th day, the alarm sounded, and his feet hit the floor before conscious thought appeared. No reflection, no decision, only motion. This is what most people misunderstand about fixed hours. It isn't about discovering the ideal schedule. It's about eliminating time as a variable. When actions happen at different times, the brain must decide each time. When the hour is fixed, the brain has nothing to argue against. Then another problem surfaced. The time was locked, but the activity kept changing. Some mornings he meditated. Other days he read. Occasionally he added exercise. The mind had found a new opening. The argument shifted from when to what. 20 minutes at 5 a.m. became dependable, but the practice itself remained unstable. The schedule solved only part of the equation. The loopholes remained. He had eliminated the when, but not the what. This is where Dogen's teaching on form becomes uncomfortable, because it demands the same action every day until resistance collapses completely. Chapter 4. The One Way. Most people believe variety prevents burnout, but variety is where consistency collapses. Every change introduces a micro-decision. Push-ups or burpees? Which book today? How long should this session be? Each decision creates a fracture where old behaviors return. Ethan removed all flexibility. 20 push-ups, 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of reading. Same sequence, same timer, same execution. This was his anchor period. 90 days of identical repetition. Friends called him mechanical. His girlfriend said he was becoming irritating. They missed the point. Irritation was the signal that the system was working. By the third week, his mind revolted. Every morning it demanded change. This is pointless. You're not a machine. Switch it up before you burn out. During the fourth week, something failed. Not discipline, resistance. The negotiating voice weakened. By week 6, he was already mid-movement before realizing the routine had started. The practice was executing itself. This is what people misunderstand about consistency. It isn't sustained willpower. It's repetition until willpower becomes irrelevant. The body learns sequences the way dancers learn steps. An MIT researcher who has studied behavioral automatization for over a decade explains, when an action is repeated in the same context for roughly 66 days, the basal ganglia assume control. The behavior becomes automatic. You are no longer choosing it, you are performing it. On day 35, Ethan came down with the flu. On day 40, work travel disrupted everything. This is where the old pattern normally returns. Illness becomes an excuse. Travel becomes permission. This is where previous attempts ended, where most people stop, because they require ideal conditions, and ideal conditions never exist. Dogen understood something critical about interruption. He wrote that practice must continue without even a momentary break, because within that break the old self reappears. What carried Ethan through failure and disruption was a single realization. Practice doesn't demand perfection. It demands continuity. Chapter 5. Practice without gap. The all-or-nothing lie has destroyed more consistency than laziness ever has. You tell yourself, if I can't complete the full 20 minutes, what's the point? If my push-ups won't be perfect, I'll start again tomorrow. That logic creates gaps, and gaps are where the previous version of you re-enters. Study any elite performer, and you'll notice something people misunderstand. They take rest days, but those days still count. They're deliberate, strategic, scheduled. Never because they feel unmotivated. never because they don't feel like training. A rest day is designed to enable harder work later. It still moves the objective forward, but skipping because you're tired isn't rest, it's withdrawal. A river never stops moving. During drought, it may narrow, slow, or thin, but it continues. The moment it stops, it ceases to be a river. It becomes a trace of where water once moved. Your practice follows the same rule. The instant you allow a break, you're no longer practicing. You become someone who used to. Day 40 arrived with travel. An airport at 4 a.m. Back-to-back meetings. No hotel gym. Ethan dropped to the floor of the airport bathroom and did his push-ups. People stared as if something was wrong with him. Good. He meditated inside the Uber. He read while the plane taxied. Nothing was ideal. Everything preserved momentum toward the declaration he made 90 days earlier. This is Gyoji, practice sustaining itself. That's when others began to react. Colleagues said something about him felt different. Friends said he was becoming obsessive. Someone claimed his discipline was unhealthy, that normal people don't live this way. When you hear that language, you're aligned correctly. Normal people receive normal outcomes. You are not aiming for normal. You are aiming for unbreakable. But there's a threat no one warns you about. The disruptions you never anticipate. The problems you can't plan for because you don't know they exist yet. Chapter 6. Pre-solutions. Your child gets sick. Your car breaks down on the way to training. Your boss traps you late at work. These moments destroy consistency because you haven't decided in advance how to respond. Every unexpected disruption forces a decision under pressure. That decision, made in chaos, always favors comfort. The obstacle wins because you're fighting without preparation. Zen monasteries have maintained uninterrupted practice for centuries. Earthquakes, wars, famines, the practice remains. Why? Because they don't decide in the moment. The response already exists. When the meditation hall floods, they relocate to the dining hall. When the dining hall burns, they sit in the courtyard. No meeting, no debate, no negotiation. The bell sounds, the body responds. Ethan listed every situation that had ever ended his discipline and solved each one in advance. Rain meant push-ups in the garage. Guests at home meant silent movement in the bathroom. A hangover, which shouldn't occur, but if it did, meant 2 push-ups, 1 minute of meditation, 1 page of reading. Every scenario carried a fixed response. When X occurs, I execute Y. No thought, no debate, only action. The strength of this system isn't just continuity. It's the removal of decision-making. Your nervous system knows the practice survives regardless of circumstances. That certainty rewires stress response. A Yale behavioral psychologist with 2 decades of research found that pre-decided actions eliminate decision fatigue at critical moments. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-control, is preserved for execution rather than choice. Day 70 arrived. Ethan's routine had become fully automatic. He sometimes woke without remembering starting the sequence. His body moved as if programmed. His girlfriend's mother stayed for a week. At 5 a.m., he did push-ups in the bathroom. The practice persisted because every answer was already written. On day 90, he completed his anchor, 3 months without interruption. But the deeper change was already complete. He was no longer who he had been. Friends said it openly, "Your consistency is frightening." His response was simple, "Good." Chapter 7. The Transformation. Because the moment your discipline unsettles other people, you've crossed into the correct territory. Your mere presence becomes evidence that what they label impossible is simply what they refuse to endure. That's why they'll call you extreme. That's why they'll lecture you about balance. They need you to slow down so their inertia feels justified. But this was never about them. It was about what you uncovered. Consistency isn't the act of repeating something daily. Consistency is an identity that no longer knows how to stop. When you install the Gyoji system, a public declaration, a fixed schedule, a frictionless execution method, and decisions resolved in advance, you're not stacking habits, you're rewriting who you are. You cease to be someone who attempts, you become someone who operates. And when that shift locks in, when the change is irreversible, people will study you and ask, how does he do that? The truth is simple. He doesn't. He is. So the real question remains, are you prepared for this depth of change? Because this has nothing to do with motivation or discipline. It's about destruction and reconstruction. The destruction of your inconsistent self, the construction of your unbreakable one. The Gyoji system will not improve you. It will replace you. You will become someone others observe and quietly think, that's not normal. And when you hear that sentence, you'll know you've arrived exactly where you intended to be. If this chapter altered how you see discipline and consistency, subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss what comes next. And leave a comment answering this. What will your public declaration be? Which habit will you lock in using the Gyoji system? Remember, the consistency that unsettles others is the only consistency that actually matters. If you've stayed with me until the end, thank you for your time.